There are 10,000 ways to die in the 41st millennium, but only one way to truly live, to stop being prey. I used to believe in the Emperor's light. We all did. It was beaten into us since birth. The litany chanted before every meal. Every mission, every shot fired in his name. But in the mud-choked trenches of Varric's prime, the Emperor was as distant as the stars we could no longer see through the smoke. We fought and bled for a name that never answered our prayers. I was a guardsman, nothing more than a number in the endless ranks of the Astra Militarum. My lost gun was pitted and scorched, my flak armor reeked of mold, and my commanding officer hadn't slept in 6 days. The enemy was the same as always: traitors, mutants, heretics. Or maybe they were just men who broke before I did. That night, the shelling had stopped for the first time in weeks. The silence was worse than the noise. It made you hear things you shouldn't. In the distance, I thought I could make out a sound beneath the wind, a low, rhythmic chant, carried over the mud and blood. Freedom, deliverance, power. I remember pressing my Vox bead tighter, thinking it was static. But the voice didn't come from the Vox. It came from inside my helmet, soft and patient, like it had been waiting for me. "You have been forgotten," it whispered. "You fight for masters who will never know your name." I froze, heart pounding. I'd heard stories of warp echoes, voices that slipped through reality like knives. The commissar had warned us. If you hear the whispers, report them immediately. I didn't. I couldn't. There was something in that voice that felt honest. The mud beneath me trembled as artillery thundered in the distance. The ground shook, and a crater swallowed half the trench line. I crawled through smoke and blood to pull a wounded trooper free. His name was Delan, a kid from Cypermundi, barely 16. He was missing half his face. "Hold on," I shouted, dragging him to cover. He coughed blood and looked up at me with one eye. "He's calling to you too, isn't he?" My stomach turned to ice. Before I could answer, a shell landed behind us. The world became fire and teeth. When I came to, Delan was gone, vaporized. Only a shadow of his outline remained, burned into the wall of the trench. The whisper returned. Louder now. Closer. "You can die forgotten here, or you can rise." I remember screaming back into the void. "Who are you?" There was laughter. Not cruel, not mocking, amused. A friend. A truth teller. One who offers you what your corpse god never will. My lost gun clicked dry. My squad was gone. My Vox was dead. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe the commissars were wrong. Maybe the Emperor's silence was the true heresy. That night, I found something in the trench wall, a symbol carved deep into the metal plating, almost hidden beneath grime and blood. 8 arrows radiating from a single point. It pulsed faintly in the dark, like it was alive. My hand moved before I could think. I touched it. The metal burned, and yet it didn't hurt. The symbol flared like molten gold, then sank into my flesh, vanishing beneath the skin of my palm. Then came the voice again, deeper this time, clearer. "You are chosen." The world tilted. My vision blurred. And for a moment, I saw something beyond the smoke and ash. Vast shapes moving between stars. Laughter echoing through eternity. A war eternal and holy in its madness. When I woke, dawn had come. The next wave was forming. But something inside me had changed. My fear was gone. My faith twisted into something sharper. The commissar walked the line, preaching duty and sacrifice. I met his gaze and smiled. I didn't know it yet, but I had already begun my journey toward damnation. The recruiter's voice. They came for us in the night. Not the enemy. Not yet, but something worse. It began with screams from the western trench. Then came the sound of lost fire, short and panicked, followed by silence. Sergeant Varon ordered us to hold position. His voice trembled as he tried to sound calm, his bionic eye scanning the shadows. The air stank of ozone and blood. We waited. Minutes dragged into hours. Then, through the mist, a figure appeared, tall, cloaked, moving with an impossible stillness. The auspex showed nothing. The Vox crackled, spitting out fragments of words and languages no human tongue should shape. When the figure reached the edge of the trench, I saw his armor, black ceramite, pitted and scarred by centuries of battle. The 8-pointed star of chaos burned faintly across his chest plate. A chaos space marine. Even half broken, his presence was overwhelming. He moved with the grace of a predator. And though his armor hissed with damage, his eyes glowed with cruel intelligence. Sergeant Varon raised his weapon, barking orders. Fire! Fire! The figure simply lifted one gauntlet, palm open. Bolts of crimson light burst forth, vaporizing half my squad. The sergeant fell backward, half his torso gone. I didn't fire. I couldn't. My finger froze on the trigger as that same voice filled my head again. You see now, don't you? The Chaos Marine looked directly at me. Beneath the rebreather mask, his voice was a rasp of amusement. You're the one who hears him, he said. He's marked you. I stammered something. A prayer, maybe, but the words turned to ash in my throat. You fight for a dead god. The Marine continued, stepping closer. You bleed for those who see you as waste. But you could be more. You could be remade. I should have shot him. Every instinct screamed it. But all I could do was stare as he reached out and rested one armored hand on my shoulder. The ceramite burned cold. I felt the symbol on my palm flare in response. For an instant, the world went black. When my vision cleared, the trench was empty. No bodies. No blood. No Marine. Just me, standing in the ruins, lost gun trembling in my hands. The Vox unit flickered to life. Static gave way to a voice, not his, but another. Human, weary, edged with pain. If you can hear this, it said, follow the smoke beyond the ridgeline. Freedom waits. It was madness. A trap. It had to be. But behind me, artillery fire resumed. Our own guns, pounding the trenches we'd just fought to hold. The Imperium was cleansing the sector. Everyone still down here was already dead. So I ran. Through mud and corpses, through smoke and fire, until my lungs felt ready to tear apart. I followed the faint red glow on the horizon, the color of blood and promise. By dawn, I found them. A small camp hidden among the ruins of a manufactorum. Survivors. Dozens of them. Their armor mismatched, their banners defaced with blasphemous sigils. A mix of deserters, renegades, and others like me, marked by something unseen. At the center of the camp stood the Chaos Marine. His armor repaired now, his presence undeniable. He looked at me like a craftsman studying raw material. You came, he said. I had nowhere else to go. He nodded once. Then kneel, mortal. You have taken your first step toward eternity. I did. Not out of faith. Out of exhaustion. Out of a hunger to live, even if it meant damnation. As I knelt, the other recruits gathered, chanting words I couldn't yet understand. The Marine raised his blade, a corrupted relic, its edge whispering with trapped souls, and drew it lightly across my brow. Blood seals your oath, he intoned. The dark gods take note. When the blade touched my skin, fire erupted behind my eyes. I saw visions, galaxies burning, angels falling, armies screaming their devotion into the void. I saw the Imperium not as salvation, but as a cage. And in that agony, I felt something else. Joy. Section 3. The pact sealed in blood. I awoke in a haze of smoke and whispering. The camp was alive with fevered devotion, chanting voices. The hiss of incense burners. The clang of corrupted machinery being blessed in dark prayer. My head throbbed where the blade had touched me. But beneath the pain was something else, a pulse that wasn't mine. The mark on my palm glowed faintly through the grime, beating in rhythm with a heart that did not belong to me. The Chaos Marine, he called himself, Marvek, stood before a makeshift altar of twisted steel and skulls. Around him knelt the other recruits, some ex-guardsmen, others once Imperial citizens who'd fled the purges. We were broken things, drawn together by the promise of something more. You are not yet warriors, Marvek said, his voice carrying easily over the chaos of the camp. You are vessels, shells waiting to be reforged. To serve chaos is not to be free. It is to be seen by gods who crave your devotion and your suffering. The air vibrated with his words. Behind him, servitors hung suspended from chains, their mouths stitched shut, eyes replaced by burning runes. Their blood dripped into a basin, each drop hissing as it hit the molten surface. Marvek turned toward me. Stepped forward, chosen. I hesitated, then obeyed. My legs felt heavy, as if wading through unseen resistance. He reached into the basin and lifted a handful of the burning ichor. It should have melted his gauntlet. It should have melted me, but it only shimmered, like liquid gold. Do you swear to forsake the false emperor? He asked. My mouth went dry. I thought of the trenches, of D-Land's charred body, of the commissar's sermons about loyalty and purity. And then I thought of the whisper and the way it had made me feel alive. Yes, I said, barely audible. Marvek tilted his head. Louder. Yes, I shouted. The Marine smiled beneath his mask, a terrible, knowing grin. Then accept the pact. He pressed the burning ichor into my chest. Agony exploded through every nerve. I fell to my knees, clawing at the dirt as something entered me. Not flesh, not fire, but will. It coiled through my veins like molten serpents, rewriting what I was. My screams were drowned by the chanting of the cultists. When it ended, I lay gasping, smoke rising from my armor. The smell of burnt flesh filled the air. Marvek's shadow loomed over me. Your body has begun to change, he said. The gods have noticed you. I didn't understand, until I looked down and saw that the mark on my palm was gone, replaced by a faint scar shaped like the eye of Horus, pulsing with its own heartbeat. The whispers came again, louder this time. Not one voice, but many, laughing, promising, hungering. From the crowd stepped a woman, pale, eyes black as the void. She wore robes of flayed skin, each stitch glistening with warp oil. He survives the touch, she said to Marvek. Few do. She will prepare him, the Marine declared. If he endures the rites, he joins the next harvest. The gods require warriors. The woman, she called herself Althira, smiled thinly and gestured for me to follow. I did, half stumbling through the camp. Every eye watched me, a mix of jealousy and awe. We entered a ruined chapel, its once golden Aquila defaced. Its altars turned to shrines of blood and bone. The air was heavy with incense and decay. You think you chose this path, Althira whispered. But it was chosen for you long before you bled. Every guardsman who curses the emperor's silence draws his enemies closer. Every prayer unanswered is a seed for the gods. She reached out, tracing a line across my chest where the ichor had burned. Now your soul is bound. You belong to the warp, and it will feed on you until you either ascend or break. I don't want to break, I said. Then learn to love the pain, she replied. It's the only teacher chaos respects. That night, I dreamed of stars being devoured, planets burning, armies kneeling before thrones of brass, rot, and shadow. And through it all, one thought echoed in my skull like a heartbeat. I am chosen. The next day, Marvek summoned me again. The rites were over. The real journey was about to begin. The flight through fire. The morning came painted in ash. By then, the Imperium had noticed our absence. Orbital Auspex sweeps had found the Manufactorum ruins, and the bombardment had begun. The sky glowed with lances of light, each strike obliterating kilometers of earth in holy fury. The camp moved quickly, too quickly for mere mortals. Chaos doesn't retreat. It relocates. Every follower knew where to go, what relic to save, what corpse to abandon. The ritual sites were already burning, smoke curling like incense to unseen gods. I helped load supplies onto a line of corrupted transports. Rhinos stripped of imperial heraldry, their hulls scarred with demonic etchings that seemed to shift when I looked too long. Inside, chanting filled the air, the low hum of devotion and bloodlust intertwining. Marvek strode among us, directing the evacuation like a warlord of old. His armor glowed faintly with runes that pulsed in sync with his voice. Leave nothing of value to the corpse god, he commanded. The cleansing flame will only feed our glory. I climbed into one of the rhinos, heart hammering as artillery detonations shook the ground. Althira was beside me, whispering a litany in a language that made my bones ache. The vehicle's interior stank of oil and old blood. Across from me sat a dozen other recruits, faces gaunt, eyes hollow, each one marked by the same burn I bore on my chest. Where are we going? I asked. Althira smiled faintly. To the stars. To where your rebirth begins. I wanted to ask more, but the words caught in my throat as the rhino's engines roared to life. The world outside blurred into fire and ruin. Then came the scream of dropships overhead. Imperial Valkyries, streaking through the clouds, their payloads of death primed. Brace, someone shouted. The first explosion hit to our left. Metal shrieked. The rhino flipped onto its side, tossing us like dolls. I slammed into the bulkhead, pain blooming through my ribs. Smoke filled the compartment. Someone was screaming, maybe me. When I crawled free through the torn hatch, the world had become a battlefield again. The Manufactorum complex was collapsing, Chaos forces were scattering under the bombardment, their banners burning. A squad of Tempestus Scions had landed nearby, moving with disciplined precision, cutting down cultists with plasma fire. Marvek stood at the center of the chaos, unshaken. Each step he took turned men to ash. A Scion sergeant fired point-blank with a plasma gun. Marvek caught the shot in his palm and hurled it back, turning the man into molten slag. Get to the extraction point. Althira shouted at me, dragging me behind the ruins of a collapsed tower. How? I gasped. They're everywhere. She hissed a prayer, and a shimmer tore through the air, a rift, like a wound in reality itself. Through here, she said. It leads to the landing site. I stared into the rift. The space beyond it writhed, colors that had no name, shapes that twisted wrong. That's the warp, I said, horrified. That's your path, she replied. Move, or die here forgotten. Something inside me, the mark, maybe, pulsed, and the decision made itself. I stepped forward. The world turned inside out. For a moment, I was nowhere. My mind stretched across infinities, hearing whispers of gods too vast to comprehend. The laughter of Slaanesh, the rotting hymns of Nurgle, the war cries of Khorne, the shifting deceit of Tsench, all at once, all forever. When I fell out the other side, I hit metal. A landing pad. The Chaos Warband strike cruiser loomed overhead, its black hull covered in screaming faces molded into the armor. The air tasted of ozone and blood. Marvek emerged moments later, stepping through the warp tear as if it were mist. Behind him came Althira and the few survivors of the camp. He looked at me, his glowing eyes narrowing. You walked the storm and lived, he said. Then you are ready for the next step. A ramp descended from the cruiser. Demon engines howled inside its hangar, their chains dripping warp oil. What happens now? I asked, my voice trembling. Marvek's laughter was low and terrible. Now, mortal, you stop being one. He placed a massive hand on my shoulder, and I felt the mark burn again, deeper, hungrier. Behind us, the planet burned under Imperial bombardment. My old world, my old life, gone in a sea of fire. And yet, for the first time, I felt free. The shadow ship arrives. The strike cruiser was called Malefic Oath, and its very name made the air taste wrong. It hung in orbit like a wound in the stars. Its hull a patchwork of black ceramite and demon-forged steel. Warp lightning danced across its surface, illuminating screaming visages half melted into the plating, not carvings, but souls, bound and flayed, eternally pleading to be freed. I had never seen a ship so vast, so alive. Even from the landing platform, I could hear it breathe. Marvek led us up the ramp, and as my boots met the metal, I felt it vibrate faintly, a pulse that matched the rhythm of my own corrupted heart. The ship knew I was here. Inside, the corridors twisted in impossible ways. Symbols of the dark gods were etched into every surface, glowing faintly with an oily sheen. Servo skulls floated through the air, their oculars dripping with warp energy. The scent of incense fought with the stench of decay. Althira walked beside me, her eyes alight with reverence. She's beautiful, isn't she? She? I asked, unsettled. The ship, she said softly, a living relic of the heresy. Once, she served the Luna Wolves, before the Warmaster fell. Now she belongs to the war band of the Black Ring. You should feel honored. Few mortals step aboard her and live. I wanted to speak, to ask what awaited me here, but words failed. The whispers had grown louder since entering the ship, dozens of voices murmuring just beneath the threshold of thought. At the end of the corridor, great bronze doors loomed. Demonic faces snarled from the metal, shifting when I blinked. Marvek raised his hand, and the doors opened with a shriek of metal on stone. Beyond lay the sanctum. It was vast, a cathedral turned inside out. Rows of desecrated imperial statues lined the walls, each defaced and remade to depict the dark gods in their myriad forms. A massive warp engine pulsed at the center, its tendrils of energy coiling upward like veins feeding a monstrous heart. This is where you will be unmade, Marvek said. He gestured, and two hulking figures stepped from the shadows. Chaos Space Marines clad in ancient, corroded armor. Their eyes burned crimson, their movements heavy with centuries of hatred. They approached me and seized my arms, dragging me toward a raised platform lined with cruel-looking restraints. Wait, I shouted, struggling. What are you doing? You said I was chosen. Marvek's laughter was low, cold. And so you are? But to be chosen by chaos is to be broken first. Only through ruin is perfection born. The Marines pinned me down. Cold metal bit into my wrists and ankles. The platform began to hum, runes igniting around me. The air grew thick, and the ship itself seemed to groan in anticipation. Althira appeared at my side, a blade in her hand, the same one that had burned me during the ritual. She leaned close, her voice a whisper. Do not fight it. Let the warp flow through you. Let it rewrite you. I tried to reply, but pain silenced me. The restraints tightened, and energy surged through my body. I screamed as visions burst behind my eyes. Planets burning, demons dancing, the galaxy bleeding. Then the voice returned. Not the whisper I had heard before. This one was deeper, layered, vast. We see you, mortal. We have watched you crawl, suffer, endure. Now, you will be tested. I felt my flesh twist. My veins glowed red. I saw my reflection in the curved metal above, my eyes blackened. My skin crawling with shifting symbols. My mind tore open, and the warp poured in. The agony was unbearable, but beneath it, something else stirred. Exhilaration. I screamed again, not in pain this time, but in defiance. I am not afraid. The voices laughed, a sound like galaxies colliding. When it was done, I collapsed against the restraints, trembling. The glow faded, and the runes dimmed. The Marines released me. Marvek stepped forward, studying me with something like satisfaction. You survived the greeting. Few do. Perhaps the gods truly have a purpose for you. My breathing was ragged. What now? Now, he said, you learn to kill for them. He turned away, gesturing for the Marines to follow. Althira lingered, placing a hand on my shoulder. You are no longer human, she said softly. But you are not yet Astartes. You walk between worlds now. One step further, and there's no turning back. She smiled faintly, her eyes gleaming. Welcome aboard the malefic oath, brother. The ritual of unmaking. They stripped me of everything. Armor, weapons, even name. In the eyes of the warband, I was nothing more than raw material. The chamber they took me to was deep within the malefic oath, far from the sanctum and closer to the vessel's heart. The air shimmered with warp energy. Chains hung from the ceiling, each one etched with profane symbols that seemed to pulse in time with my heartbeat. Althira walked beside me, barefoot, her robes whispering across the blood-slicked floor. The body must die before it can be reborn, she said. Even the Emperor's false sons were torn apart before their ascension. You should expect no less. I swallowed hard. Will I become one of them? She smiled thinly. If the gods will it. Or you'll become something else entirely. Two towering figures awaited me in the center of the ritual chamber. One was a chaos apothecary, his armor a grotesque parody of medical precision, syringes filled with ichor, saws that word of their own accord, servo arms tipped with needles dripping black fluid. The other was a dark mechanicus magos, his body little more than machinery and tubing, his face hidden behind a brass mask shaped like a skull. Between them stood a table of black marble, engraved with 1,000 screaming faces. Marvek's voice echoed from behind. Lay him down. Begin the unmaking. I hesitated, staring at the slab. Every instinct screamed to run, but the memory of what I'd already endured chained me in place. I climbed onto the slab. Cold metal met my back. The restraints snapped shut. The apothecary leaned close, his voice a mechanical rasp. You will feel everything. The pain is the offering. The warp drinks deepest from suffering freely given. The Muggos activated a console, and the room came alive with machinery. Tubes descended, filled with fluid that shimmered like liquid nightmares. Runes flared across the walls. The scent of burning oil filled my lungs. The first incision burned like lightning. I screamed until my throat tore, but the sound was drowned by the chanting of cultists gathered around the chamber. The apothecary worked methodically, removing bone, muscle, and organ, replacing each with something else, something alien. The Muggos whispered Benharic prayers to appease the machine spirits, though I doubted there were any loyal ones left here. At some point, my vision fractured. I saw my body from above, saw Marvek watching with folded arms, his eyes burning through the haze. I wanted to hate him, but in the agony, I felt something like reverence. Why? I gasped between screams. Why me? He stepped closer. Because you listened. Because when the Emperor turned his face away, you sought another light. The apothecary inserted a massive needle into my spine. Fire flooded my veins. My heart stopped. For an eternity, there was nothing. Then came the warp. It poured through me like molten iron, carrying visions that weren't mine, battles fought across galaxies, worlds, consumed by chaos, angels of blood and shadow warring in the void. I saw gods, vast and terrible, watching with hunger and amusement. One voice rose above the rest, deep and resonant. You are ours now. I gasped, lungs filling with new breath. I felt stronger, heavier, like my bones had been reforged from ceramite. My heartbeat was no longer human. It thudded like a war drum. The apothecary removed the final restraint. The grafting is complete. His body accepts the changes. The Muggos nodded, lenses clicking. Integration at 98%. Subject stable. Warp's signature increasing. I tried to stand. My legs trembled, but they obeyed. My vision sharpened. I could see every crack in the walls, every flicker of energy in the runes. My skin was laced with faint, glowing lines that pulsed with each breath. Marvek approached, his gaze unreadable. You have endured what most cannot. The flesh remembers pain, and pain is power. The gods smile upon you. He handed me a weapon, a jagged combat blade, ancient and blackened with age. Now, you will prove that your rebirth was earned. What must I do? I asked, my voice deeper now, echoing strangely in the chamber. He gestured toward a side door that hissed open. Beyond it, I could hear the sound of screams and laughter. There are others who failed the rite. They are still alive for now, in their suffering. Feed the gods their due. I hesitated for a heartbeat, then stepped forward. The door closed behind me with a clang that sounded disturbingly like applause. The eye opens. The corridor beyond the ritual chamber was narrow and dim, its walls pulsing faintly with a heartbeat that wasn't mine. The metal underfoot seemed soft, pliant, as though the ship itself was breathing through its decks. The screams ahead were distant but clear, human, terrified, soon to end. I moved forward, blade in hand, the jagged edge humming faintly with unseen power. My body felt heavier, every step resonating with strange strength. My vision shifted. I could see heat signatures through walls, smell blood and oil mixed together. The apothecary had rebuilt me into something stronger, and something less. At the end of the corridor, I found the failed initiates. They were restrained to the walls, half their bodies twisted by the warp's touch. One man's arm had become a writhing tentacle of bone and sinew. Another had sprouted eyes along his chest that blinked and wept blood. Their minds were gone. Whatever had once been human in them had fled screaming into the immaterium. Marvek's voice came through the vox implanted in my skull. In them, aspirant. Do not pity the broken. They envy your strength. My hands trembled. I had killed before. Guardsmen had to. But this was different. These weren't enemies. They were me, had I failed the rite. The nearest initiate lifted his head, one good eye finding mine. Help me, he rasped, his voice raw. Please. The mark on my chest burned like a brand. A pulse of heat rippled through my veins, and I knew what I had to do. The blade came down swiftly. His voice died mid-plea. I turned to the next, then the next, until the chamber was silent except for the steady hum of the ship. When it was done, I fell to my knees. The whispers in my head were quiet now, almost satisfied. Marvek entered through the bulkhead, his heavy footsteps echoing. He studied the bodies, then looked at me. You hesitated. I couldn't find the words. That hesitation will kill you one day, he said. Chaos rewards strength and will. Pity is weakness. Do you understand? I nodded, but inside, part of me resisted. Marvek regarded me for a long moment. The ritual has opened you to the warp. The eye watches. Soon, you will see it as we do, the truth behind the veil. He gestured for me to follow. We ascended a winding passage, lined with carved skulls and flickering candles that burned with blue fire. At the top, a viewport looked out upon the void. And there it was, the Eye of Terror, a storm the size of gods, churning with color and madness, light and shadow. I had seen images before, but no picture could capture it. The warp itself boiled before me, endless, alive, whispering. Marvek stood beside me, his gaze fixed on the swirling chaos. Every world you ever knew, every creed you were taught, All of it is a lie built to hide this. The Imperium tells its slaves that this is evil. It is not. It is truth. The sight pulled at me, a hunger in my chest I couldn't name. The longer I stared, the more I felt myself unravel, as if something inside wanted to join that storm. Althira appeared behind us, her voice low. Careful. The eye hungers for the unready. I turned to her, shaken. Is this where you all came from? The gods, the power. She nodded. From here flows everything. Glory, corruption, eternity. Even death is only another path through its depths. Marvek placed a massive hand on my shoulder. You are bound to it now. The eye will test you, tempt you, remake you. If you survive, you will walk among us, a warrior of the gods. I looked back at the storm. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw something within, a vast shape moving. Golden and terrible, eyes like dying stars. It looked at me. I staggered back, gasping. Marvek chuckled. It noticed you. Few mortals ever earn that glance. The mark on my chest flared again, so hot it seared the air. The laughter of unseen entities filled my head. In that moment, I understood. I wasn't walking toward damnation anymore. Damnation had reached out and claimed me. The trial by chained word. Sleep was no longer possible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the eye. Endless, consuming, alive. Whispers clawed at my mind, urging, demanding, promising. I'd begun to dream with my eyes open. Reality fraying at the edges as if the warp itself tested my limits. When Marvek came for me, I was already awake. He said nothing at first, just tossed something onto the floor in front of me, a weapon, a chain's word, heavy and rusted, its teeth slick with oil and dried gore. The handle fit my palm perfectly, as if it had been waiting for me. Your rebirth isn't complete, he said. Strength must be proven, not declared. You've endured the flesh. Now you must prove your will. How? I asked. The same way all warriors of chaos do, through blood. He gestured, and 2 Marines entered the chamber, each clad in Baroque armor daubed with crimson runes. Behind them came half a dozen aspirants, those who had survived the initial rites. Some bore augmetic limbs, others trembled from the warp's residue. We were herded into a vast hangar-like hall, lit by torches that burned with violet flame. The air shimmered with psychic tension. Iron gates lined the walls, each leading to pits filled with shadows that seemed to move. Marvek stood upon a raised dais. This is your trial, he announced. Only those who survive it earn the right to bear the mark of our warband. The gods do not care for excuses, only strength. One of the other aspirants, a massive man named Karis, barked a laugh. And what if I kill you, old man? Marvek didn't answer. He simply pointed his bolt pistol. The shot reduced Karis's head to mist. Then you would have failed, he said coldly. The rest of us stood silent. The first gate opened with a grinding roar. From the darkness emerged a creature that once might have been human, now a chaos spawn, its limbs fused into grotesque weapons, its flesh writhing with eyes and mouths. The thing screamed as it charged. The trial had begun. I ignited the chain's word, the teeth roaring to life in a chorus of metallic hunger. The other aspirants scattered, forming a loose circle around the beast. It lunged at the nearest one, tearing him in half with a single blow. Blood sprayed across the deck. I moved without thinking, my new reflexes guiding me. The blade met the creature's arm, teeth biting through corrupted flesh. It shrieked, a sound that made my bones vibrate. Another aspirant rushed in from the flank, striking low. The spawn twisted impossibly, crushing his skull beneath a malformed limb. I brought my weapon down again, this time at the creature's spine, sawing until black ichor poured over my hands. For a moment, I thought it was dead. Then its remaining arm lashed out, claws raking my chest. Sparks flew as it struck the ceramite grafts beneath my skin. Pain lanced through me, and then something else. The mark on my chest flared, and power surged through my body like lightning. My vision went crimson. I roared, swinging the chain's word with inhuman force, cleaving the creature from shoulder to waist. It fell, twitching, then lay still. The hall was silent save for the sound of the chainsword's dying whine. I turned toward Marvek. His expression was unreadable. The gods favor you, he said. But the trial isn't over. Another gate opened. 2 spawns this time. The remaining aspirants screamed, curses and charged. I followed, my senses aflame. Steel met flesh, lost fire cut through smoke, and the scent of burning oil filled the air. One by one, they fell, devoured, crushed, or torn apart. By the end, only I remained standing. My armor was slick with blood, not all of it mine. My heart thundered with warped rhythm, every breath tasting of iron and fire. Marvek descended from the dais. "You are the last," he said simply. "The others fed the gods. You will serve them." He extended his hand, and for the first time, I saw approval in his burning eyes. I took it. Pain lanced through me as his gauntlet pressed against the mark on my chest. The flesh sizzled. Warp light flared around us. And I saw visions, demons bowing, stars collapsing, legions marching in the name of chaos. When it ended, I fell to one knee, trembling. The chain's word clattered to the floor. Marvek spoke with reverence. "Rise, warrior of the Black Rain. The Eye has judged you worthy." I rose, bloodied and reborn. The blessing of the dark gods. They took me deeper than ever before, beyond even the ritual chambers. The corridors narrowed into twisting arteries of metal and bone, lit by the pulsing glow of warp-touched conduits. The air grew hotter, denser, thick with incense and blood. Every step echoed like a drumbeat in a ritual I didn't yet understand. Marvek walked before me, his armor humming with restrained violence. Althira followed close behind, murmuring in tongues that hurt to hear. The whispers in my head grew stronger with every turn, familiar now, almost comforting. "The gods are watching," she said softly. "Do not look away when they do." At the heart of the ship lay the sanctum, a cavernous cathedral, built from the fused hulls of 100 conquered vessels. The walls pulsed like living tissue. Skulls were fused into the bulkheads, their empty sockets glowing faintly. At the center stood an altar carved from black stone, swirling with red light from within. Upon it rested a single object, a helm. It was ancient, corroded, marked with runes that shifted when I tried to focus on them. I could feel the thing's hunger from across the room. Marvek turned to me. "You have been tested by pain, by blood, by will. Now you will be tested by faith. The gods grant power, but always at a price. Are you willing to pay it?" I looked at the helm, at the darkness that seemed to bleed from it. "What happens if I refuse?" He smiled faintly. "Then you die as a man, or live as a monster without purpose." I stepped forward. The air vibrated with energy, every heartbeat echoing through the sanctum like a thunderclap. My hand trembled as I reached for the helm. The moment my fingers brushed it, the world dissolved. I stood in a void, an endless plain of crimson mist. Shapes moved within it, vast and shifting. Voices spoke from every direction, merging into a chorus of promises and threats. "You seek power. You crave meaning. You will serve us, and in return, we will make you eternal." The ground beneath me writhed, forming faces that screamed and laughed at once. I saw visions, worlds burning, angels falling, the Imperium collapsing beneath tides of blood. I saw myself among the warriors of the damned, blade in hand, cutting through space marines and demons alike. But then, another voice, deeper, colder, cut through the storm. "You think this is freedom? You are still a slave. Only the master has changed." The visions shifted. I saw Marvek kneeling before a vast, shadowed figure, his eyes hollow, his body bound by chains made of light. Althira stood beside him, her form dissolving into the warp, smiling even as she vanished. My hands clenched. "No," I whispered. "I am not a slave. Not anymore." The mist roared around me, the chorus laughing. "Then prove it." The helm rose from the ground, floating before me. I grasped it and forced it down onto my head. Pain exploded through me. Fire raced through every nerve, every vein. My flesh burned, bones shifted, and my vision filled with symbols I could not understand. The laughter became screams, or maybe they were mine. When I woke, I was on the floor of the sanctum. Althira was kneeling beside me, smiling faintly. "You did not die. Few ever return from the blessing." Marvek loomed over me, his voice low. "What did you see?" "Everything," I said hoarsely, "and nothing that I can understand." He nodded, almost approving. "Good. Understanding is the death of faith. The gods favor the mad." He placed the helm in my hands. It no longer felt cold. It pulsed with a heartbeat that matched my own. When I lifted it to my head again, it sealed with a hiss, fitting perfectly. The world around me sharpened. I could see energy trails, Hear whispers from across the room. Marvek turned to Althira. Prepare him. He will join the next warband deployment. She bowed and looked at me with something between pride and pity. Your path is written now. May the gods find amusement in your story. I rose, the weight of the armor settling on my shoulders. The whispers in my head were silent for the first time since the rite. Not gone. Merely waiting. Baptism of fire. The malefic oath broke through the void, sliding from the warp into real space with a sound like a dying god's final breath. The ship's hull screamed as the immaterium's residue peeled away in sheets of psychic flame. I felt it through the deck, a ripple of pressure that passed through armor, flesh, and soul alike. We were in orbit over an imperial world, Varelda 4, a fortress planet on the edge of Segmentum Obscurus. Loyalist banners still flew across its bastions, but the surface was already aflame. Warbands from across the eye had descended like carrion birds, each claiming dominion in the name of their gods. Marvek gathered us in the drop bay. 20 Chaos Marines stood ready, their armor adorned with trophies of bone and skin. Althira moved among them, her hands tracing runes of warding and destruction. I stood at the end of the line, the newest, the least certain, yet burning with a hunger that drowned out doubt. This is your baptism, Marvek said, his voice echoing through the bay. Varelda was once a shrine world. Now it will be an altar, and its people, the offering. He looked directly at me. You will descend with the first wave. Kill, burn, desecrate. Let the world know the gods have returned. The drop pod door sealed with a hiss. The interior lights flickered red as the clamps released. Gravity vanished. Then came the fall, a streak of fire through the clouds, thunder roaring around us. The pod hit the ground hard, the impact cracking the earth. The doors exploded outward, and the air was immediately filled with the scream of lost fire and the bellow of heavy bolters. I stepped into the open. The world was chaos, loyalist trenches, artillery emplacements, and the bodies of Imperial guardsmen strewn across mud turned to ash. Above us, titanic shapes fought among the clouds, corrupted dropships, clashing with Imperial Valkyries, trails of flame marking their descent. I raised my chain's word, its teeth revving with a hungry snarl, and charged. The first guardsman I met didn't even have time to scream. The blade tore through flak armor like parchment, showering me with blood and smoke. I moved through the trenches like a storm, every blow guided by instinct and the whisper of unseen voices urging me onward. Fire! Hold the line! An officer shouted from behind a bunker. His men obeyed, unleashing a volley that struck me full in the chest. The impact staggered me, but didn't break my stride. The ceramite grafts beneath my skin glowed faintly, dissipating the heat. I leapt into the bunker, driving the blade into the officer's chest. His eyes met mine, not with hatred, but disbelief. "What are you?" he gasped. I didn't have an answer. By the time the others reached me, the trench was silent. Marvek's voice came through the vox. "You fight well, initiate. But the gods demand more than blood. Find their chapel. Desecrate it." I turned toward the distant spire that pierced the smoke-choked sky. An Imperial chapel, its aquila still gleaming faintly through the haze. The path there was carnage. I passed through burning ruins, where survivors screamed for Medicae that would never come. The smell of promethium mixed with the copper tang of blood. Every step was a sermon to the ruinous powers. When I reached the chapel, its doors were already barred. I placed my hand against the icon of the Emperor carved into its surface. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I drove my blade through it. The doors splintered inward. Inside, priests and civilians huddled before the altar, clutching relics and chanting prayers. One of them, an old man, raised a lost pistol with shaking hands. "Monster!" he shouted. "The Emperor will judge you." I tore off my helm. "He already has." I advanced, and the last of my humanity burned away in that holy place. When it was done, I set the altar aflame. The aquila melted, its wings collapsing into molten gold. The ceiling cracked as the structure burned. I knelt amid the fire, the mark on my chest blazing like a brand. Marvek's voice filled my mind. "Do you feel it? The gods accept your offering." I did. Power surged through me, intoxicating, terrifying. I felt the warp brush against my soul, whispering promises of endless war and eternal purpose. I walked from the burning chapel as the spire collapsed behind me, its bell tolling one final time before it was swallowed by flame. Above, the storm clouds turned crimson. The warband ascends. When the fires of Verelda were finally guttered out, the world was nothing but ash and bone. We left it behind as a gift to the gods, its surface carved with burning runes visible from orbit. From the bridge of the Malefic Oath, I watched the planet crumble under orbital bombardment, its crust splitting like rotten flesh. Marvek stood beside me, silent. The light from the burning world reflected off his armor, turning him into a silhouette of crimson and gold. "You have done well," he said at last. "The gods have taken notice. They hunger for more." Althira approached from the shadows, a datapad clutched in her clawed hands. "The Imperium will respond, as they always do. A flotilla has been sighted near the Gedhan system. Fragments of the Crimson Tears chapter. Loyalists." At the mention of Space Marines, the bridge fell silent. Even among traitors, the thought of facing their loyal kin stirred unease and excitement. Marvek smiled faintly. "The sons of the Corpse Emperor come to avenge their dead. Good. Let them come. Their deaths will feed the gods." He turned to me. "You will lead the vanguard assault." I blinked, unsure I'd heard correctly. "Me? You have proven yourself," he said. "You killed in the gods' name, and they spared you the warp's hunger. You are one of us now, brother." The word hit harder than any blow. Brother. It carried weight in this place, not of love, but of shared damnation. Within hours, the warband made ready. The ship's hangars roared with life as servitors loaded munitions and chained demonic engines into place. The Malefic Oath's hull glowed with runes that pulsed in time with the warp, like the heartbeat of a living god. Althira met me in the armory. She was alone, tending to her own weapons, a staff tipped with a crystal that screamed softly when touched by light. "You do not seem pleased," she said, not looking up. "I'm not sure I deserve this," I admitted. "They call me brother, but I haven't earned their armor. Their scars." She tilted her head. "Deserve? In the eye, that word means nothing. You survive or you don't. That's the only truth chaos offers." I ran a hand across the jagged edge of my chain's word. "And Marvek, what does he survive for?" "For remembrance," she said softly. "Once, he fought for the Emperor. He remembers that loyalty, even now. But his faith changed its name." The war horns sounded then, a thunderous note that shook the ship from prow to keel. Warp drives flared, casting the hangar in crimson light. The fleet emerged into the Gedhan system like a wound opening in the void. Ahead, Imperial ships held formation, 3 strike cruisers and a handful of escorts, their purity seals fluttering in the light of a dying sun. Vox traffic filled the airwaves. Loyalist commands shouted with practiced precision. "Crimson Tears, this is Captain Viral." A voice boomed over open comms. "We have detected your corruption. You will find no quarter here." Marvek leaned forward on the command throne. "Open channels," he ordered. Static filled the air, then his voice cut through it like a blade. "We are not here for quarter, Captain. We are here for faith." At his signal, the fleet fired. Lances of warp-infused energy tore through space, colliding with the Loyalist ships in explosions of white and violet flame. The void screamed. Boarding pods launched in their thousands, hurtling toward the nearest cruiser. My own pod shook violently during descent. The others with me, corrupted Marines, their armor decorated with flayed sigils, chanted praises to the gods as we fell. When the pod hit, the deck beneath us cracked open like bone under a hammer. Bolter fire met us immediately. Loyalist Marines in red and black armor holding the breach. Their sergeant stood at the front, his helmet crowned with a purity seal, his stance perfect. "In the Emperor's name," he roared. We clashed. Bolter shells tore through the air, detonating against corrupted ceramite. I charged, Chainsword roaring, cutting through the first Loyalist I met. He fell without a sound, his blood spraying across the wall. Their sergeant came next, a blur of skill and fury. His blade met mine with precision that reminded me, painfully, of what I once was. "You were one of us once," he hissed, driving me back. "You can still repent." I met his strike and pushed him away, sparks flying between us. "I've already found my god." Our blades locked again, teeth grinding. For a moment, our helmets were inches apart, and I saw my reflection in his visor. Not a man, not a Marine, but something twisted and burning. I broke the lock, fainted low, and drove my chain's word up through his chest. He convulsed once, then fell. Silence followed. Only the sound of burning air filters filled the corridor. Marvek's voice crackled through the vox. The bridge is ours. Finish them. And so we did. Echoes of the Emperor. The Loyalist cruiser burned from within. Flames licked the walls of the corridors, fed by ruptured fuel lines and the blood of the slain. The air was thick with ash and the smell of ozone. Vox units screamed prayers, distress calls, death rattles, all blending into a single, beautiful cacophony of ruin. I moved through the smoke, helm lenses cutting through the chaos. Every step echoed across the deck plates like a heartbeat. The gods whispered softly in. My mind now, approving, curious, hungry. The bridge lay ahead, sealed by adamantium doors marked with the sigil of the crimson tears. I placed my gauntlet against the metal, feeling the hum of its sanctified wards. Once, I would have revered such craftsmanship. Now, I saw only another barrier to be broken. I ignited the chain's word. Sparks flew as its teeth bit deep into the door. Marvek and his chosen joined me, firing melta charges into the lock. The air shimmered with heat, metal sagging and splitting. When the doors finally fell inward, the bridge defenders opened fire. Bolter rounds screamed past, detonating against our armor. A plasma gun's blast tore through the air, incinerating one of our warriors. Marvek stepped through the carnage, bolter raised, firing controlled bursts that turned loyalists into crimson vapor. At the center of the bridge stood their captain, a massive figure in ornate armor, his chest plate engraved with the sigil of a bleeding heart. His eyes glowed faintly with the light of a rosarius. And in his hand, he held a power sword that hummed with sanctified energy. Marvek, he said, his voice calm despite the slaughter. I knew it would end this way. You should have died at Istvan. Marvek chuckled. Ah, Captain Viral, you still remember the past. Tell me, did the Emperor thank you for surviving his betrayal? Viral's expression didn't change. He did not need to. I have my duty. They met in a clash of light and fury. Marvek's corrupted blade screamed as it met the Loyalist's power sword, sparks cascading in every direction. The warp itself seemed to recoil from the purity of Viral's faith, and yet, it did not falter. I turned to face the remaining crew. Loyalist Marines formed a defensive circle around their captain, chanting battle hymns even as we tore into them. My chains were bit through ceramite and flesh alike, each strike echoing with the rhythm of my heartbeat, the rhythm of the gods. One by one, they fell. The last defender lunged at me, his bolter empty, swinging it like a club. I caught the blow, twisted his arm until it snapped, and drove my blade through his chest. When I looked up, Marvek and Viral were still locked in combat, their strikes blurred into streaks of light, both warriors roaring oaths that shook the deck. Then Viral broke through Marvek's guard, driving his sword deep into the Chaos Lord's side. Marvek bellowed in rage, grabbing Viral by the throat. You always lacked vision, he snarled, wrenching the Loyalist's blade free. The Emperor abandoned you long ago. He tore off Viral's helm, revealing a face marked by centuries of war, scarred, stern, but still human. The Emperor never abandons his sons, Viral said quietly. He merely waits for their repentance. Then he drove a combat knife into Marvek's throat. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. Then the warp surged. Marvek's laughter filled the bridge, bubbling and distorted. Black fire erupted from the wound, consuming his armor, his flesh, his very soul. The air rippled, reality bending as something vast pressed against the veil. Viral stumbled back, eyes wide. What have you done? The rest of his words were lost as Marvek changed. His armor split apart, molten symbols crawling across his skin. His body expanded, tendrils of shadow erupting from his back, his voice merging with a dozen others. The bridge groaned under the pressure of his transformation. I fell to one knee, overwhelmed by the psychic wave radiating from him. The gods had answered his call. The thing that had been Marvek raised its newly formed claws, eyes burning like dying suns. I am no longer your brother, it roared. I am chosen. Viral met the demon with no hesitation. His faith burned like a beacon, the Emperor's light shining, defiantly even against the abyss. For a moment, I saw the two forces of creation and corruption collide. and I felt small beneath their shadow. Then the bridge exploded in light. When the glare faded, Viral was gone. Marvek stood victorious, his form half demon, half mortal, breathing in the scent of death like incense. He turned to me, eyes glowing with unnatural fire. Bear witness, brother. This is the fate of the faithful. The demon lord's shadow. The aftermath of Marvek's ascension spread through the malefic oath like a contagion. The ship itself seemed to rejoice, bulkheads pulsing with rhythmic vibrations, lights flickering in time with the warp surge that radiated from the bridge. The air thrummed with new life, if such a word could still apply. Those of us who survived the battle felt it immediately. The mark of change seared deeper into our flesh. The gods' whispers louder and more insistent. Some knelt in reverence. Others screamed as their bodies warped uncontrollably, bones bending, eyes multiplying. The ship was a cathedral to transformation now. Marvek? No, the thing that had been Marvek sat upon the bridge throne. His form immense, shifting between armored titan and monstrous godspawn. His voice was everywhere at once, carried through Vox channels, vibrating through the hull, whispering directly into our minds. I have been judged, he declared, each word a physical force. And I have been found worthy. The Emperor chained me. The gods have freed me. Now we will unmake his false light. The warband roared its approval, but I stood silent. The energy radiating from him was suffocating, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Althira approached me later in the sanctum. Her expression was unreadable, her voice hushed. He cannot remain as he is. The warp does not allow balance. He will ascend further, or he will collapse into madness. Then what happens to us? I asked. She gave a small, humorless smile. We follow him, or we burn with him. Her words echoed in my mind for hours. I found myself pacing the corridors, unable to escape the low hum of warp energy coursing through the ship. Every shadow moved as if alive. Every reflection shifted when I wasn't looking. Then, the summons came. 2 possessed Marines found me, their armor fused to their flesh, eyes glowing faintly behind their helmets. The Lord commands your presence, one hissed. They escorted me to the bridge. The space was darker now, lit only by the glow of warp fissures crawling along the walls. Marvek turned his gaze toward me, and my vision blurred. His eyes were twin voids, filled with stars dying in silence. You have seen much, he said, his voice reverberating through my bones. Felt the touch of the gods. Do you still doubt? I hesitated, knowing that hesitation itself was dangerous. I do not doubt the gods, I said, but I wonder if they remember us. His laughter shook the air. Foolish mortal, the gods remember everything. We are their reflection, their hunger, their promise. He leaned forward. You question because you are close. They test you as they tested me. Tell me, do you wish to ascend as I have? My mouth went dry. If they deem me worthy, then prove it. He gestured to the viewport. Below us, an imperial world rotated silently in the void, Tarsus Magna, a hive planet still untouched by chaos. I could see orbital defenses, bastion rings, and the faint glimmer of loyalist fleets guarding its skies. Marvek's tone softened, though the air still vibrated with power. You will take a strike force. You will descend. Spread our truth. If the world burns, the gods will know your name. If you fail, he smiled, a monstrous parody of humanity, they will still know your name. I bowed. It will burn, my lord. He dismissed me with a wave of his claw. Take Althira. She will watch. She will judge. Hours later, our ship entered Tarsus orbit under the cover of the warp's residue. Drop pods rained like meteors upon the hive's surface, smashing into the city spires. Loyalist Vox channels screamed warnings. The war had come to them in an instant. When the doors of my pod blew open, the hive was already in chaos. Civilians fled through the streets, their faces lit by the red glow of fires spreading through Manufactoria towers. Above, the sky churned, warp lightning crackling through clouds, tearing holes in reality. Althira's voice whispered through my comms. Remember, brother, the gods do not need victory. They crave spectacle. Let the world witness. We moved through the hive like a disease. Every bullet, every scream, every corpse was a verse in a hymn of ruin. The loyalist PDF fought bravely, their lost guns spitting defiance. But defiance means little against those who have seen eternity. By the time night fell, the Hive's central cathedral stood before us, the seat of its planetary governor and the last refuge of the faithful. As I stared at its gilded doors, I felt something stir within me, not doubt, but memory. The echoes of prayers I once muttered as a guardsman, the smell of sanctified oils, the promise of light. I clenched my fists until the armor groaned. The Emperor's shadow reaches far, Althira said beside me, her tone almost gentle. But even shadows can burn. The Hive burns. The descent into the cathedral district was a vision of apocalypse. The Hive spires crumbled beneath the thunder of orbital fire, and the streets became rivers of molten debris. The sky was painted in a palette of crimson and ash, and the air itself screamed, alive with warp distortion. The gods were watching. I led the strike force forward, the banner of Marvek's new legion unfurling above us, a ragged sigil daubed in the blood of the loyal. The Vox crackled with reports from our other warbands. The Hive's defenses had collapsed in most sectors, but resistance remained at the core. The faithful always die hardest. Althira moved beside me, her staff humming with raw psychic force. Her eyes glowed faintly, twin coals of warp energy. The cathedral lies ahead, she said. Its wards still hold. The loyalists gather within. They pray for salvation. I stared through the smoke. The great spire of St. Leandro rose in the distance. Its golden dome cracked, but unbroken. Around it, Imperial Guard remnants had formed a defensive line, chimeras, barricades, and the silhouettes of thousands of desperate men. They will die praying, I said. She smiled faintly. Good. The gods adore despair. We advanced under fire. Lost beams streaked through the gloom, scoring my armor. Explosive rounds from autocannons detonated nearby, showering us with debris. My warband returned fire, their bolters roaring, tearing loyalists apart in wet, crimson bursts. Every step forward was a testament to attrition. We moved through bodies. Men and women who had once believed the Emperor would protect them. Now their faith was splattered across the stones of his cathedral. We breached the outer defenses. A grenade detonated near my head, slamming me to the ground. My vision blurred. Through the haze, I saw one of my brothers, a hulking warrior marked by cinches. Favor, raise his hands and summon living fire. The warps surged, reality bending as blue flames poured from his palms, consuming the barricades and everything behind them. I rose, steadying myself. Althira stood untouched by the inferno, her face serene. Do you feel it? She asked. The veil grows thin. Every death, every scream, it feeds the storm. Above, the sky split open. A rift, vast and pulsing, tore through the clouds. From within, tendrils of raw warp energy licked at the Hive's towers. The screams of the dying merged with the whisper of demons clawing at the edge of reality. We reached the cathedral gates. Massive, reinforced, etched with holy scripture. I struck my chain's word against them, sparks flying, but they did not yield. Althira stepped forward, pressing her hand to the metal. Faith forged these walls, she said. Faith will unmake them. Her voice deepened, layered with something not her own. The runes along her armor flared as she chanted words older than language. The metal groaned, warped, then melted like wax. The gate collapsed inwards with a deafening crash. Inside, the defenders made their stand. Imperial priests, guardsmen, and even a handful of sisters of battle. They sang hymns through the smoke, voices trembling but strong. Their faith struck something within me, something that felt like memory. A sister charged me, her power sword crackling with holy energy. I parried, sparks showering as our blades met. She fought like a storm. Every strike a prayer, every movement an act of devotion. You can still turn back, she shouted. You were human once. I am human, I snarled, forcing her back. More human than you can comprehend. I caught her arm, twisted, and drove my blade through her heart. She gasped, eyes wide, then whispered, "The Emperor forgives." Before collapsing, I stood there, staring at her body, hearing her words echo in the hollow chamber of my mind. Forgiveness. The word meant nothing now, and yet it clung to me, stubborn as a scar. Althira's voice broke my trance. They're breaking. Finish it. We moved toward the altar, cutting down the last defenders. The governor cowered behind the pulpit, clutching an Aquila, tears streaming down his face. "Mercy," he begged. "In the Emperor's name." I raised my weapon. "The Emperor's name is a lie." The shot ended him. The cathedral fell silent, except for the distant thunder of battle and the slow groaning of the warp, tearing the city apart. The altar cracked, revealing a pulsing fissure of energy beneath, the warp bleeding through the very stones. Althira knelt, tracing her fingers through the air above it. "A gate," she whispered. "A gift from the gods. You've pleased them." The rift widened, spilling light, not the light of the Emperor, but something older, rawer. The gods had seen. They had heard. I looked around the cathedral, at the bodies of the faithful, at the symbols of the Imperium defiled and burning. For the first time, I wondered if this was victory or damnation made manifest. The price of ascension. The warp rift tore open above the ruins of the cathedral like a wound in reality. Colors that had no name twisted through the air, and the sound of it was maddening, a chorus of screams, laughter, and whispered promises all at once. The gods were close. Too close. Althira stood before the rift, her staff raised high. Warp lightning coiled around her, lifting her from the ground. "They come," she said, voice layered with 1,000 others. "They have seen your deeds, brother. They are pleased." I fell to one knee, the pressure of their attention crushing. My armor creaked, blood seeping from beneath the seals. Every breath felt like breathing molten iron. Visions filled my mind. Galaxies burning, demons feasting on worlds. The Emperor's corpse throne dimming beneath the weight of endless heresy. From the rift emerged shapes, vast, beautiful, and terrible. I could not look directly at them. They were all things at once. Beasts, gods, suns, storms. Their voices pressed into my skull, each word a blade. "You have sown despair. You have broken faith. You have offered blood." I gasped, head bowed. "I have served. I have killed in your name." 1,000 tones overlapped. Hunger, mockery, curiosity. "And yet, you doubt." Althira turned toward me, her eyes glowing like twin stars about to collapse. "Do not resist. Surrender, and they will remake you." My thoughts churned, memories of a guardsman's uniform, of prayers whispered in the dark, of comrades who died believing in something pure. I had burned it all, and yet, standing before the gods themselves, I felt only emptiness. "I do not doubt your power," I said. "I doubt your mercy." The rift pulsed violently. Althira screamed, consumed by a torrent of light. When it cleared, she was gone. Or perhaps she had become something else, her essence woven into the storm. The gods spoke again, their tone shifting from curiosity to disdain. "Then you will not ascend. You will serve." Agony ripped through me. My flesh tore, my armor fused with bone. My vision split into a dozen overlapping worlds. The gods were rewriting me, unmaking and remaking until all sense of self disintegrated. I could feel my soul stretching, breaking, becoming an echo in the endless choir of the damned. But then, something resisted. A single thread of thought. A memory. The sister of battle I had slain. Her voice. "The Emperor forgives." That whisper became a weapon. It cut through the gods' chorus like a blade of light. My transformation faltered. The warp screamed in fury. I forced myself upright, chain's word in hand, though it was little more than molten slag now. "You do not own me," I said, every word torn from my throat. "Not yet." The warp convulsed. The gods howled. Their power struck me like a tidal wave, throwing me back into the shattered altar. My armor cracked. My blood boiled. But the rift began to close. Slowly, painfully. The link between real space and the immaterium collapsing under the strain of my defiance. When I awoke, the hive was gone. Only ruin remained, blackened dust and oceans of glass. The malefic oath hung in orbit above the dead world, silent. I stumbled through the ruins, my armor fused, my vox dead. I could feel Marvek's presence even from orbit, distant, vast, and monstrous. He had ascended fully, leaving the mortal realm behind. And I was left behind. A fragment, a failure, a survivor. I looked to the ash-filled sky. For the first time in what felt like centuries, I spoke words not meant for the gods. "If you still watch from that golden throne, Emperor, forgive what I have become." No answer came. Only silence, deep, absolute, and eternal. The gods' whispers faded, but one truth remained. Once you have heard the warp, it never truly leaves you. I took a final look at the burning sky, then turned toward the horizon. Somewhere, there would be another war, another world to fall, another chance to silence the memories. Perhaps one day, I would see the Eye of Terror again, and this time, I would not resist. Thus ends the tale of the one who dared to question even the gods of the warp. His story is neither victory nor defeat, merely the truth of existence in the 41st millennium. That faith, whether in the Emperor or in the dark gods, is a currency paid in blood. To be recruited into the chaos space. Marines is not a path taken, it is a transformation endured. Every choice strips away humanity until only will and hunger remain. The weak are devoured, the strong are reshaped. And those who survive carry the weight of both damnation and enlightenment. The Imperium teaches that chaos is corruption, but in truth, it is revelation. It is the mirror held up to mankind's most secret desires. And yet, as this tale shows, even revelation comes with chains. The gods grant power only to those willing to lose themselves entirely, and sometimes not even that is enough. Our protagonist's final act of resistance was not redemption. It was remembrance. In a galaxy where faith is both weapon and poison, memory is the last flicker of the soul. As for Marvek, the demon lord who rose beyond flesh, his name would echo in the warp for millennia, a reminder that ascension is never the end. It is only the beginning of another form of servitude. And so, the galaxy turns indifferent. One world burns, another kneels, another forgets. But somewhere, in the ruins of a cathedral long turned to dust, a whisper lingers, a voice that once said, "The Emperor forgives. The Emperor protects." More stories await.